Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Paul Simon started, unbeknownst to his friends, they could not believe that he actually started and got into fashion. But getting into fashion he has. So he started up YDE, Young Designers Emporium. He then sold it 10 years later to Truworths Group, a massive blue chip company, for a 6-figure sum. Simon, we're still going to interrogate you about this. Yes. And he's won a lot of awards. Also, Ernst & Young's SA Best Entrepreneur Award by Ernst & Young. He won the Cosmopolitan Award for Mover of the Year. I thought it was for something else, but we'll go with Mover of the Year. And also he got the Investec Private Bank Award as well, and the South African Jewish Report Award. So guys, can you please stand up? Give a massive round of applause, there we go, to none other than Paul Simon. Woo! Thank you very much. Welcome. Come upstairs. There we go. Guys, please, like I said, please ask your questions on here. You can see the tweet stream. It flips every few minutes between the Twitter and the questions. And welcome this evening to Startup Grind.
Thank you very much. If I can just start off by saying that I'm both humbled and grateful that we got a full room of people. I said to my wife before I left the house this evening, what happens if I get there and there's no one there? So it was quite a nice surprise to get a full room. Thank you on a cold winter's night in Cape Town for coming out, and I hope that I can add some value to at least one person in this room, then it will be worthwhile. So thank you very much for having me. The other thing is just a heads up. I've got nothing to do with YDE. I sold the business 10 years ago, and anything that you hear me say tonight is purely my own opinion. That relates to both YDE and the other businesses that I'll talk to you about. So kind of like underline, I'm not a spokesperson for the company at all. In fact, I don't think they'd like it if I was. And so yeah, but by all means, as I say, if I can add any value and answer anything that's of value to anyone, it'd be great. My pleasure.
Excellent. Paul, welcome and thank you for coming. First question we start for most startup grinds is, where were you born?
I was born in Cape Town.
Cool.
Grew up grew up in a middle class family in Constantia. So I'm 42 years old. Which part of that was funny? The middle class, the Constantia? Okay, this is going to be an easy crowd to work, right? Born and bred in Cape Town.
Born and bred in Cape Town. What school did you go to? Where did you matriculate?
I went, well, so that's a trick question that, because I got put in the local Jewish day school, which is Herzliya. Yeah. But I managed to get expelled from both the primary and the high school. So eventually I matriculated from Abbott's College. So kind of, bit of both.
My question is, why were you known as Bart Simon at school?
Bart Simon? I've got no idea.
Bart Simpson. Why were you known as Bart Simpson?
Never heard that before. I've got no idea why I was called Bart Simpson. How do you know I was called Bart Simpson? Never heard that before, so I can't answer that one. I thought we had an understanding that there was going to be no questions that I couldn't answer tonight. There's the first one. I've got no idea where you're
This is a long night.
I was never known as Bart Simon or Bart Simpson, but okay.
Well, anyway, I met a guy today. He said, no, you're known as Bart Simpson because you wore those big LA Gear shoes. Did you wear LA Gear shoes?
Wow. Very possibly, but I've got no idea. I'd love to know who that was.
I'll tell you that. That's good. It's all good. Okay, so what did your parents do?
Okay, so my dad was in the meat business. My father originally started Blue Ribbon Butcheries with Raymond Acumen back in the day, when Pick and Pay, well, I still say to him, being the entrepreneur that I am, why did you ever sell? And he said, well, you were born. And that is when he sold. He sold back to Pick and Pay, and Blue Ribbon Butchery is obviously owned by Pick and Pay today. Sure. They sold in 1972 when I was born. And in fact, he's still got the serviette of him and Raymond Acumen that sat in a Spur franchise and did the deal on the back of a serviette. Sure. And so he was always in the meat business. And then subsequently retired for a couple of years and then opened a small butchery in Highlands Estate. Both my parents now are retired, so they're on holiday in Plettenberg Bay as we speak. Nice. And my mother had a decor company called the Party Warehouse, and they basically did decor for functions, lighting, flowers, balloons, that kind of stuff. But neither of them are still working.
Why fashion? Why did you studied fashion, right?
It's a funny question. Well, a lot of people, obviously being the founder of YDE, have this perception that I was sewing clothes as a 9-year-old and kind of starting off and kind of dressing up in men's or women's clothing, whatever your preference is, and kind of I had this real passion for and for longing. And I haven't told a lot of people this story, but it's an interesting and a very true one. And that is that, how did I get into fashion? So after getting asked to leave the school that I was at the end of Standard 9, and the reason I might add was because they were quite proud of their matric results. The school that I was at got 100% pass rate for matric, and they called my parents in and they said, look, we'd like you to take Paul out the school. This was at the end of Standard 9. And my parents, well, what are you talking about? He's going into matric now. I said, no, we don't think he's going to get through matric. I was voted least likely to succeed at school, by the way. They said, look, we've made up our minds. You need to take him out the school. And in fact, if you don't take him out the school, then we'll expel him. And I went to Abbott's College, and even I don't know how, never having read a Setwork book, never having studied for anything, I managed to get sufficient grades in for matric to get a university exemption. And probably, listen, I wasn't going to become a doctor, don't get excited, but I mostly to do a BA, get into university. Sure. And my parents were super excited with my track record. They thought that this was, the Messiah had arrived. And I kind of, obviously, university applications had closed, and they kind of came to me and they said, look, what are you going to do? You've either got to study or work. And that word work was like, no. There's only one thing that is more scary than actually working, and that would, the more scary than studying, and that would be working. And I was sitting around with a couple of guy mates, and we were probably having a drink or two. And I said, look, my parents told me I've either got to study or I've got to work. What should I do? And we came up with this idea that if I enrolled in a fashion course, most of the people, the majority, in fact, all of them in the course would be female. So that was a great idea, and that is how I decided to study fashion. Because I thought, well, there's going to be a lot of chicks in the you're talking about an 18-year-old here, so just kind of try and transport yourself back. And it was so funny that I ended up enrolling in a course at Cape Technicon, and didn't even look at what the course entailed and what you were actually studying. It just had the word fashion and clothing involved in it. It was actually clothing production management, and the least glamorous of all in the fashion industry. That basically it was training to be a factory manager, and you had to time, the ladies and rate their productivity, etc., etc. And I discovered this, and hence obviously didn't complete that. That 3-year diploma ended after the first year. But that's how I got involved in fashion in the first place, was because there'd be a lot of chicks in the place. Yeah. So at 18, that's probably what I sounded like.
Okay, so at what age did you start your first business, and was it YDE?
Okay, so I was fortunate that being brought up, even though I came from a middle-class family, my parents kind of always instilled in me, I was never given kind of stuff on a silver platter. In fact, I'll never forget, we went to this very nice private school. My friends all got cars when they turned 18, and my father was, you need to work and buy your first car. My first car was a 1974 gold Golf with brown seats. As you drove, rust fell off it. Oh. And who's now my wife today, my girlfriend at the time was answering the phones, as her job was answering the phones, Mr. Delivery, and she lived in Sea Point and I lived in Constantia. She used to have to give me $5 to put petrol in my car to come visit her. So it's kind of, I'd always worked, but kind of enough work, to give me sufficient money to jaw, for example. So, sure. I worked for my parents, and I delivered the flowers for my mom, and I delivered pizzas for St. Elmo's. I was a barman, so kind of had work my whole life. But in terms of my own business, my first business I started was YDE. lucky. So, yeah, the first business I actually started when I was 21.
Talk us through that process. Why did you start it at such a young age?
Okay. So the story is a little bit long, but I'm going to urge you to listen to it because this is really the feel-good part of it for everyone. I traveled overseas. I'm going to go back a few steps. I traveled overseas because after I left or got thrown out of Technikon, my parents once again gave me the opportunity and said, we've tried to kind of give you a tertiary education of some kind. I think in my dad's exact words, you've pissed the money against the wall. Once again, your mother and I get up and go to work each day. We don't mind if you're packing shelves at Pick and Pay or if you go study medicine, but you need to do something. You can't, at that stage, I think I was delivering pizzas for St. Elmo's. And I'd basically get paid from St. Elmo's. I'd go jawling, come home in the early hours of the morning, sleep all day, and then go do the same thing at night. And they said, look, this isn't okay. You need to kind of have literally a 9 to 5. And once again, being a little scared of actually working, I said,
you decided to go entrepreneur route.
Yeah, as what's called the gift of the gab.
Yeah.
As many youngsters do, I said, no, I'm going to go travel overseas. I'm going to go find myself. So I got on the plane, and I'm fortunate I've got a British passport, and I went over to the UK. I saved up enough money for the air ticket and probably enough spending money for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Well, I got off the plane, met a couple of girls and guys, and I went on the proverbial jawl, and 3 weeks later I found myself completely penniless in the UK with literally nowhere to sleep. In fact, I slept in Hyde Park one night, and although I'm Jewish, I waited outside a church where they were giving kind of homeless people food. And this is not a word of a lie. When I say that, I mean the planning was that I didn't have any money. I did not have any money. And I subsequently went into Gap, and I'd had kind of this 1 year of exposure to fashion of some kind, and I gave them this whole story about how I'd worked in retail in South Africa and this and the next. They gave me a job, and it sounded quite glamorous, and it was great for me to speak to the folks at home and say, look, I've got a job at Gap in Oxford Street, this and the next thing. My job, I was given an A4 page board, and I had to fold T-shirts. I wasn't even allowed to engage with customers. I'll never forget, you get these American kids that run in, and you've just piled them all up beautifully and everything's straight, and they pull them all out. That was my job. So
cool.
not that glamorous.
So you know how to fold T-shirts.
Well, it gets a little bit worse than that. I'm not sure why I'm going through all this detail here, but is this on film?
Yeah, it's all right. It doesn't matter. It's a closed place.
So I'm sitting in a bar one night, and I meet a nurse. And she said, I've literally told my mother the story probably 4 or 5 years ago for the first time. She burst into tears. And I met a nurse, and she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm working at Gap. She said, what are you earning? I said, £4 an hour. And she said, well, I'm involved in a hospital called Guy's Hospital where they test drugs on kind of, you get kind of like processes. They start off with in the lab, and then it goes to animals, and then it goes to humans, and then it kind of all of us get to take it. And being young and dumb, I said, well, can you get me into the program?
Of course.
She said, no problem. Being my charming self, I kind of said, that's great. And the next thing, I found myself at Guy's Hospital having some blood pressure drug tested on me. All I know is that they paid me a couple of £100 a day. I had a roof over my head. I had people, they had a pool table and videos and all kinds of stuff. And I kind of left Gap and didn't tell anyone at home, told them I was carrying on working at Gap, and literally took the money and traveled around Europe and had this wonderful time. When I came back, I found myself in the same position that I was in before I left, basically nowhere. My friends were all at tertiary institutions, becoming doctors, lawyers, doing business science degrees and the like. And the same question came up again. What are you going to do? And I said, no, I'm going to study. I've got this feeling. I've kind of really enjoyed the fashion angle, and I was probably talking a lot of bullshit again. And I enrolled in Gift of the Gab, and I enrolled in a 1-year fashion marketing course. I passed it with flying colors. It was the first thing I actually passed and achieved. It was basically through IMM. So it was like marketing 1 and 2, like you do at university. It had a fashion element, and they had an external fashion lecturer that came in to lecture us. And the final year-end project was to do storyboards of designs of some kind and present it to the lecturer as if she was a chain store buyer and kind of trying to sell your range. I did really, really nicely, and this was the first thing. I was probably starting to mature only slightly, but managed to do that, and I did a range. I wish I had brought it to show you, because ugly is not the word, but at the time, you need to talk, we're talking 25 years ago. And I did this range, and I went to my lecturer afterwards, who I got on particularly well with, and I said to her, look, I'd like to actually produce tangible samples of this range that I've put together, and I thought I was going to go out and I was going to sell it to retail stores. How naive. And I went to sit in her factory. She had a factory where she supplied chain stores at the time, and there's a huge irony here that's coming that you're going to love. And I sat with her seamstress. I said, look, I'll pay, and can I make a tangible sample of each garment, which I did. And then I had these garments, and friends and family obviously told me that they were great, but they would anyway. And I made a couple of phone calls, and I couldn't even get a meeting. There I was, I think I was probably 19 or 20 years old, with no tracker, and they said, well, what's your factory called? Who do you supply currently? And sort of rattling off a whole lot of questions. I don't really know, and quite clearly didn't even get one single meeting. And I kind of started loafing around a bit. I was working as a barman in a nightclub in town, and kind of fell pretty much back into where I was before, making enough money to go out and party, kind of sleeping all day, partying all night. And I was walking through the waterfront with my mum, and I'm a mummy's boy, by the way. And there in the window, and this is the irony of Truworths Ltd, was my entire range. There it was, boom, in the window. I literally dropped to my knees, and the tears started pouring down my face. I cried quite a lot at that stage of my life. But I literally dropped to my knees, I can't believe that this has happened, and kind of thing. And in reality, and kind of looking back now, that is how the industry works. There's no kind of secrets, and kind of everyone. What had obviously happened, and there's more irony coming, what had obviously happened was that someone, a buyer or something, either my lecturer who supplied the chains had showed it to the buyer, or the buyer had maybe seen it. However it happened, it ended up in the window. And really what I did from there was something that my mom said to me really resonated with me, and that was that, look, if you had the context, you've obviously got the right idea. Well, I'm a little boy, so of course she thought that you must have talent somewhere deep down. But if it's in true words, and it was literally verbatim, kind of everything, the wooden toggle buttons of the waistcoat, and it was all there. And that kind of did something to me. It sparked something in me that gave me, kind of ignited, probably just gave me the what's the word? The kick in the arse, for want of a better word, yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
To kind of say, look, you maybe are on the right thing. And it was at that stage that my father started getting peeved off with me. And he basically said to me, look, we've been doing this for years. We've gone around the circle a number of times. I was living at home at the time, rent-free, I might add. And he said to me, look, you've got to go out and get a job now. This is crazy. It's all very nice that your range was in the window of Truworths, and that's fantastic. But, your mother and I, in the same speech came, get up each day, and we kind of do our thing. You need to get up and actually get your ass into gear. You can't live this lifestyle that you're living. And in fact, if you don't, you need to find somewhere else to live. And being Jewish, we have this big Friday night Sabbath dinner, and they're normally boisterous occasions, quite a lot of alcohol consumed, debating everything from politics to what this person wore at that function. And this was on, my dad and I had this discussion probably on a Monday or Tuesday. And I said to him, Dad, listen to me, I've got a plan. I'm just putting a business plan together, and I'm going to present it to you. Not only did I not know how to put a business plan together, but I didn't know how to spell business plan. So once again, I was talking nonsense, or for want of a better word, lying. And it got to the Friday. He hadn't remembered too much about it, and the whole family arrived front, and I stood, not because I'm a wonderfully brought-up child, because I'd never done it before, and I stood at the front door and greeted every single family member and said, listen, whatever you do, don't say, Paul, what are you doing now? I don't want to don't want to jog the old guy's memory, because I might not have somewhere to sleep tonight. And that's exactly what happened. My uncle arrived a little bit late, and I can almost still see it and taste it in slow motion. So, Paul, what are you doing now? And my dad banged his whiskey glass down on the table and said, "What about this business plan? You told me you were putting this, what's going on?" And I had to literally make up something right there and then, and with not a word of a lie. Was where the concept of YDE was thought up and developed, never mind business plans, in its entirety. So he said, "Well, so what is this business plan?" I said, led by his questions. So I said, "Dad, you know I told you I'm doing a business plan. I'm going to open, my range was obviously right. I just didn't have the contacts. I'm going to open my own retail store. And because if the other retailers don't want to take it, I'll do it myself." And the obvious question to his son, who had proverbially pissed the money against the wall through education and everything else that he tried to do for me, and said to me, "Well, you know, who's going to pay for the store?" And I had to think again, and I said, "Well, you know," and there's always power in numbers, and I said, "Look, you know, I've spoken to a whole lot of the people that I did that one of the 3-year course at Cape Technicon. I've spoken to all the people that I was kind of involved with in the 1-year fashion marketing. They're all in the exact same position as me, because there's power in numbers, and it wasn't just me that was loafing. And what we're going to do is we're going to all share the shop." He said, "Oh, really? That sounds very interesting." I said, "Yes, you know, like a kibbutz type environment," which I thought was was quite apt for the Friday night dinner table. And fortunately, the conversation went off in a different direction. And I woke up the next morning, I thought, you know, all that shit that you spoke last night, maybe there's some truth in it. And I made a couple of phone calls to people that had done the course and found that that's exactly was the case. A lot of them were going off into, they weren't all loafing like me, but a lot of them were going off into other industries unrelated to fashion because they could not break into the market. I said, right, I'm going to open a shop for all of us young designers that can actually kind of, you know, have our stuff there. We don't have to go to the buy. We don't have to do it. It's going to be, and that was how the concept of YDE was born and developed. So, you know, when they talk about the guy that kind of like invented matches, mine was around a boozy Friday night dinner table. So that's how I started YDE.
So you had to have the balls to actually go and do it.
Well, one of the things that I give a lot of talks on entrepreneurship and that kind of, I'm never really sure if I am a true entrepreneur. And the reason why I say that is that...
That means you really are one, but okay.
No, I'll tell you why, because a real entrepreneur is someone that really takes risks. And because of probably my age and lack of business acumen, skills, and all the rest of it, I actually was so naive that I didn't know the pitfalls and what I was actually getting into. I just went ahead like I do with everything, throw everything into it and kind of say, well, let's do it. And a story to tell, an example of that, of my naivety, was that it was a long process of, obviously there was no fancy, I had no money, there was no fancy PowerPoint presentations. I kind of went into Cavendish Square because I grew up in Constantia, that was my shopping centre, and I saw the application forms for a store and I thought I was going to open YDE, the first YDE there. I said, excuse me ma'am, like Oliver, can I please have an application? No, we don't have any application forms. I kind of trotted out, and this happened on a number of occasions. Doors were closed in my face, and eventually I found the first YDE stores just off Green Market Square, and Green Market Square, unfortunately, today isn't what it was then. It was a melting pot of amazing design talent, really cool, trendy restaurants around. It was just like a hip happening place to be, and I wanted the shop there. And I found this store in a tucked away kind of, it was the MBS arcade. It's still there. So it's like this dark, deep ditch. And I think the store had been empty for 5 years before I got there, and I think it's probably empty now. I don't know. I haven't been there for a while. And the landlords are NBS Bank. Anyway, they said, sure, we'll give you a store. No problem. And we got the lease, and then I got to this thing called surety, and I didn't know what surety was. So you're talking about starting a business, like Weidy, I didn't know what surety was. And once again, there were lots of tears. Once someone explained to me what surety was, I knew no one in their right mind would sign surety for my lease. And my mother came home, and there I was crying on my bed, and she said, what's wrong? I said, I've got these 10 people together, and I think I've got this thing, and I've kind of designed the shop in my head, because we kind of built the first shop myself. I started the whole business with 10,000 Rand. And, but there's this thing called surety, and I know no one's going to sign surety for me. And unbeknownst to my father, my mother ceded her retirement annuity policy as surety for me at the bank. She's talking about real love. Now, when I say that I was naive and am I a true entrepreneur today, knowing what I know now, probably not that much, but a little more than I knew then, I would never allow my mother to I mean, I don't sign surety on anything, period. I've got to say. I certainly wouldn't allow my mother to cede a retirement annuity policy as surety for me, but it's just one example of how naive I was when I went into it and how it may not have happened had I been kind of thing. So am I a true entrepreneur? Not so sure. So that's kind of how things happen there.
Well, you notice the love there, hey, right? My mum was in the audience, by the way.
Okay.
Okay, so YDE took off. You worked obviously really hard after that. I mean, you had to now make something out of this, because otherwise it's back on the streets.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's and please, if I'm talking too much, I'll just go on to the next question, but these stories are coming to me as I go. So go to my father, I need money to start this shop, and he begrudgingly gave me 10,000 Rand, and I've still got the letter, and he made me sign it to say that if I blew this 10,000 Rand, I would go get a job, whether it was packing shelves, but whatever it was, and however many salary checks it took, they were going to him. I was literally seeding like my mother had done. I was seeding it to him. Now, to give you an example, by the time, and I sold YDE about 10 years ago, by the time I sold YDE, it probably cost about between 1 million and 1.5 million Rand to fit out a store. I had 10,000 Rand. And in London, I'd seen a shop with metal, and I had a mate who had a bucky, and I bought some metal sheets, and I got a thing of Gen Chem glue, because that was fun, and stuck the metal sheets on the floor, and kind of put the thing, and I had another friend that welded some rails, and we kind of got to the end, and I realized, keep in mind we're opening a retail store, I didn't have money for a till. And I used my fishing tackle box from holidays. We used to go to Plettenberg Bay. I had a fishing tackle box, took it out. It had all the things for the hooks and sinkers and that kind of stuff. And that was my till. You know, by the time I sold the business, I got invited to lots of fancy affairs with French champagne and sushi and, you know, the launches of things. My launch party was 1 box of wine and my gran and my mother with some finger sandwiches. So, I mean, it really was kind of in Judaism, we say shemzach. Yeah. So, I mean, we were really kind of, and literally no staff, so it was me that ran the store myself. And I managed to pay my father back the 10,000 Rand after the first month. And from that day, I vowed never ever to borrow money for anything again. I've never borrowed money. So we didn't open the next store until the previous store before that could pay for the next one. And so we managed to grow the business. Granted, we were able to do this because of the business model. We didn't own the stock. So you needed a lot less money to open a retail. So it was literally fixtures and fittings and that kind of thing. But we literally managed to grow the business into kind of 14 stores around the country kind of thing without borrowing any money. Therefore, I didn't have to give up any equity.
what was the business model of YDE?
Okay. So the business model of YDE effectively, and it was developed once again, not through any brilliant kind of ideas, or it kind of just literally morphed because of circumstances. And the circumstances were, I didn't have money for stock, so I said, well, let's share it. I didn't have money for rent, so I said, let's share it. I didn't have money to pay the staff, so I said, let's share it. So effectively what I was doing was creating a platform for young South African fashion designers to give them an outlet to showcase their merchandise in an environment that was kind of pretty cool and hip and happening at the time, without having to sign a lease with Old Mutual, without having to shop fit a store, without needing. So really what we did was created a platform that supplied them with everything other than the actual merchandise. So the beauty of it was that, and it's why I think that the same concept can work in many other industries, is you're leaving the fashion designer to do really what they're good at. Invariably, it's that left and right side of the brain type scenario, where sometimes you get them both. I'm not great at either, but I'm okay at both.
Yeah.
But generally, you get kind of like a creative person thinks creatively, kind of business person thinks business, and never the two shall meet. And I was that person that kind of helped them meet. And what I did was allow them to literally do what they were good at, which was design and produce clothing, and we took care of everything else for them. So they paid a monthly fee, and for that monthly fee, we kind of ran the accounts, we paid the staff, we trained the staff, we created the environment for them to sell the merchandise in, etc., etc., etc. And really, that's what YDE was. It was a platform to showcase South African design talent.
Can we fast forward now to 2015? E-commerce comes online. How would the business model of YDE and e-commerce, could you marry the two? What would you... Okay.
Not only could you marry the two, but we have married the two. I have recently, in the past while, been approached, and I'm involved in a company called Threads. And Threads is really a YDE platform and model, and that was my involvement. I'm not involved on a day-to-day basis. I'm a shareholder. They've given me equity in the company in order to explain to them how the concept works and the business model. And really what it is, it's the exact same thing, because although I'm a little bit of a technical ignoramus, you'll sit around a dinner table, and I've noticed hearing people speak outside, there's a lot of techies here, so excuse me if I don't use all the right lingo, etc., etc. But basically a lot of people say, yeah, but e-commerce doesn't work. Well, e-commerce doesn't work in certain circumstances. Once again, remember the thing, in my opinion. And invariably and I did this myself, invariably what people do in e-commerce, let's say I'm a fashion brand. So I've got a mate, because everyone's got a mate that builds sites. So you go and you get your mate to build a site, and even if the site is brilliant, and even if your merchandise is brilliant, the sales don't come. You say, well, why don't the sales come? And that's because all of you checkers out there will know that it's a science, like retail's a science, it's a science to drive traffic, to create that whole back-end market, etc., etc. It takes a lot of time, effort, and money to do. And really what happens is Joe Soap, that's got his shirt business, doesn't have all of those skills, all those money, and therefore says, oh, well, e-commerce doesn't work. The other option is to go to the big players, and I'm not involved with any of them, so I can say what I like about them. You know, the Zandos, the Sprees, those kinds of guys, and that's all fine and well if your product is correct for that market. So for example, my thing is for like a South African fashion designer, what have you really got? You've got your brand. And the minute, in my opinion, that you give your brand over to one of those big guys, you've lost control of your brand. And what I mean by lost control of your brand, they now determine the price. So now they bought this is the old school business model, like a Pick and Pay or anything else. They buy the merchandise from you, so they squeeze you, and you've got to deliver it by then, and they'll cancel it if it's not delivered, and all that kind of horrible stuff that goes with the big chains. But now it's theirs. So if by the 25th of the month, maybe their sell-off rate hasn't been what they want it to be, they have some meeting, or a click gets pushed, and you say, all right, we're going on 25% discount. All of a sudden you see your merchandise is now discounted. You didn't control that. What happens if you don't want that to happen? Invariably, in these big kind of businesses, it's also shot really badly. I mean, I've seen horror stories, gaping trousers at the back, and just really poorly done. And so I was approached by a company called Fonterra, a kind of web-based company, and they said, would I come in and get involved in e-commerce? I said, I don't want to touch e-commerce for all the reasons I've just told you. And they said, no, we want to do it. And I said, look, if I'm going to get involved, it needs to be a point of difference. And the point of difference with Threads is it's effectively the YDE business model. So what are they doing? In an online space as opposed to a bricks and mortar space, they're supplying everything that a brand needs in order to go online. So they'll do your photography for you. You determine, as the supplier, you determine the price. They're not at liberty to discount it without your permission. You can attend the shoot if you want and style it if you want, because creative people want to do that and should be able to do that. You can also determine what merchandise gets put on there, because you supply the merchandise. So it's not a buyer who's 6 months into their job saying, no, I don't think that we want that, we want that. And you kind of, as the designer, saying, hold on a second, but I know this is really what's happening. This is the hot thing. This is what's going to sell. No, we don't want to buy that. There's none of that. Basically, it gives the control back to the brand. And although I have a very small equity stake and I'm not involved, as I say, on a day-to-day basis, I help set up that business model. And effectively, it is a YDE business model, but for online brands. And it's just clothing related. So it actually exists. It launched about a month ago and going quite nicely.
A month ago?
2 months ago, maybe, yeah.
I saw them venture being okay, anyway. So the next question is, both of these, online and offline, you've got to make sure you've got the right suppliers. Because at the end of the day, it's also the brand of Threads and it's the brand of YDE. Do you go through a vetting process, and how do you manage that?
Yeah. Look, I'm going to speak specifically about YDE because, as I say, that I ran myself, and Threads I'm not involved in on a day-to-day basis. YDE, we did, first of all, the merchandise was initially chosen by myself, but one of the things that, fortunately for me, I just picked up on very, very early on, is that buying, and I wanted to be a buyer. Another little irony is that I applied to Truworths and Fashinis to be part of their buying program, and neither of them would take me. This was pre-YDE. In order to be a buyer, you can't buy merchandise, because otherwise, if I bought Paul Simon merchandise, everyone would be in a pair of chinos and a kind of blue shirt. So you need to kind of almost think out the box and think, what does the customer want. But the beauty of the YDE concept was that the customer decided. It didn't really matter to me what sold and didn't sell. If it didn't sell, we asked you to leave and we brought in a new designer. So the market, it's almost like crowdsourced. The market determined what went in there. Having said that, there was obviously a vetting process, and each supplier to YDE went through me personally. I had a basic set of questions and kind of answers that I was looking for to see if I thought that the people were, the brands were.
What are those questions about?
Well, some of them at the time it was kind of, I said, where do you make your merchandise? And I looked at the quality of the merchandise and do you have capacity to supply more than 2 stores? And, you're talking a long time ago. I don't remember exactly all my questions, but basically you kind of get a feel for, is this person, could they make it? But the nice thing is it's a safety net. It's not like the normal traditional retail where if you buy it, oh shit, I made a mistake, it's not selling. I never took ownership of that merchandise. If we sold it, we made money, and if we didn't sell it, we didn't. So that's the beauty of the concept. It's literally, yeah.
And what is the importing stuff? A lot of the stuff obviously was imported, or was it had to be locally
Right,
made?
so that's one of the differences between YDE now and when I had YDE, we were very, very strict based on the fact of why I started the business, that all merchandise had to be, other than shoes, because we couldn't get them here, and maybe a couple of accessories, sunglasses and stuff like that, but all clothing had to be locally produced in South Africa. Wow. That was one of the criteria. So you say the questions, did someone bring in a whole lot of kind of fine gauge knitwear from China and put their label in? I would know, because I know you can't do fine gauge knitwear in South Africa. It's kind of an example of one of the questions I would ask. Now, I don't want to speak for them, but just having a brief look with my eye, no, it's not all locally manufactured. But no, I mean, when we had it, the business was set up for young local design talent, and we were quite strict about that.
Talk us about the Truworths when they came in the negotiation process. Give us some insights for negotiating. Say, I've got now scaled my business, I want to sell it. Give us some insights.
Very, very, very difficult time of my life. It was the one time in my life that I wish I'd done a business science degree, that I was a CA, all the rest. I was kind of like a little bit out of my depth. Having said that, the first thing I've got to say is you've got to want to sell your business. And at that stage, I wanted to sell the business. The reason, for someone like me, I'm kind of ADD, ADHD, any other acronym that you can think I'm all of them. And for me to do one thing for 10 years was a very long time. And I ran that business even though I started when I was very young, at 21 I started it. I ran it for 10 years. And the business turned into something that certainly my business acumen and skills that had kind of reached its peak. So for example, we had stores all over the country, we're now national, and I would go get on the plane and I'd fly around the country and I'd go and do unannounced store visits, and I'd literally walk out of the stores crying because they were a disaster. It was a mess, and the staff wasn't there, and the customer complaints. I didn't have those systems. I didn't have the background of systems there. In hindsight, I could have just gone and employed a CEO. But with my arrogant attitude, the chance of me being able to work with someone, it was better for me to sell. But that wasn't actually the main reason. I thought it was one of the reasons. The second, the reason is it wasn't fun for me anymore. And for me, kind of, going back to what my parents said about getting a job or whatever, I'm inherently a lazy person.
That's why you started your own business.
Well, it is, unless I really enjoy what I'm doing. Yeah. I don't mind working 24 hours a day. But tell me I've got to do something.
No ways.
I'll give you every reason why I can't do it, why I'm not at work, why I'm not. YDE was 24 hours a day. My new business, Uber Flavour, 24/7, no problem, because I love and I'm passionate about what it is. I lost the passion for it. At that stage, I was probably employing 380 people. I was dealing with HR issues. I didn't have my friend David from HR Pulse doing my stuff for me at that stage, and I was kind of dealing. This one's boyfriend was hitting her, and this one was on drugs, and this one was kind of thing. And the final straw was my manager of my Sandton City store.
Your flagship
store. Wait for this. You're not going to believe it. Gave her Coke dealer the keys. Well, I didn't know she had a drug problem, which I subsequently obviously found out. Gave the keys of my Sandton City branch, the keys, the alarm code, and the safe keys on a month-end Saturday night, and said, go and help yourself. And at that stage, I was young as well. I was probably 28, 29 years old, and I literally just burst into, I don't want to do this anymore. It wasn't fun. It was those kinds of problems that I was dealing with on a daily basis. that kind of made, so it was quite easy. The fact that, we were YDE and we were the hip happening thing of the day, we had quite a lot of suitors. So it wasn't that we went and put the business on the market. They had been approaching us for a while. And it was a number of these things, a combination of all of these things that kind of said, I'm ready to do it. And we saw that deal was very, very difficult. Every set of attorneys that I went to help kind of negotiate on my behalf, in some way or another were connected to Truworths, had acted for them once somewhere, and kind of, sorry, we can't take on your work. And I was very fortunate that I had a friend's father who's a very, very astute businessman that kind of guided me through the process. Sure. But it was a very difficult time in my life. A, you giving up your baby? And B, you kind of don't really know kind of what should I be asking for.
Now that you've gone through that and you've done a few deals since then, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs that want to sell?
Look, I think you need to, I wouldn't just sell for the money. You can always make money. And it doesn't last forever. The second thing would be that I would say you need to want to sell your business. You need to want to sell your business before you sell it, if you do decide to sell it. And then once again, it depends on how emotionally attached you are. I was very emotionally attached to YDE. This was my baby. This was all I knew. This was... Still, here we're going tonight and we're talking all about YDE. I sold this business 10 years ago. Almost was I don't want to be Mr. YDE anymore. Now I want to be Mr. Uber Flavour. Hopefully you're going to give me a chance to talk about this now. So you can imagine I was really passionate. I was directly linked to this brand. And in order to give it up, that's the advice I give. Are you able to give it up? Are you intrinsically attached to the brand that you're selling? The product that you're selling, or is this just a commodity thing? And I think depending on that, the advice may be different. Okay. But the main advice I'd give is get great legal and accounting advice, because this is not something, and I don't think you're not meant to know it. I've done a couple of deals since then. I've probably learned a little bit, but there's no ways I would go and do a deal now without bringing in the correct help. So
mentors, did you have mentors throughout the whole thing?
I did. My dad mentored me quite a lot, and I was very fortunate, as I say, because of his relationship with Raymond Acumen. Raymond Acumen was my mentor, so that was very fortunate for me. But once again, when I started, particularly YDE, I was young and arrogant, and I actually thought I knew more than them. Bizarre, but I did at the time.
So you sold YDE, you just had a successful exit, and you started your next business. Did you think you could always do well at all businesses? Well,
not only did I think I could do well in business, I thought, because I retired at age 31. I thought that's what I wanted. And I kind of took a year off, and I got through school, gone to university, I wanted to be an architect, and I built a home. So I was very, very grateful and that it allowed me to do that. And it was the worst year of my life, the so-called retired year, the worst year of my life. All my friends were doing exciting things in their businesses. You go out for dinner and sit in here and talk about, we're doing this and we're doing that, and what did you do?
I laid the brick on the...
I had a meeting with my QS, and I watched them lay some bricks, and my taps didn't... it was futile, absolute nonsense stuff. And for someone like me...
You put in the Tivoli taps or the...
Yeah. And Tivoli.
Tivoli.
And it really was, everyone imagine if I could just retire and sit on the beach all day. I thought I'd got to that stage of my life. It was literally the worst year of my life. And I then was still probably a mixture of arrogance and ignorance, where I thought, I did YDE. Of course I'm going to be successful. And my wife was expecting our first child. And I went around because my friends were having kids at the time, and I didn't like the play areas that the kids went to, and I had to take, going, no, they're dirty and the facilities on us. And I thought, I'm going to open a kids' play park. And in true style, because I'm not a huge believer in business plans, sorry, I'm just not.
It's fun.
No business plan. This would have been a great time for me to have been a believer in business plans. I should have. And I went completely balls to the wall, opened this huge place in Canal Walk with Italian furniture and brought in jungle gyms from America and threw a whole lot of money at it, which I lost. And not taking 1 second to think that in South Africa, all children have either got a nanny or a play school from Monday to Friday. So if you work and you are able to, you maybe got a nanny at home, and maybe if you don't, well, then your kid's in some form of play school. I go, so where was I going to get customers from Monday to Friday? And I didn't have any. There were none there Monday to Friday.
Weekends it was
with
packed.
all this furniture. Well, weekends it was overflowing. And when I ended up closing it down, everyone said, well, why did you close it? It was always so busy. Yes, it was very busy on a Saturday and a Sunday. You try to cover an overhead 2 out of 7 days a week, and you'll see that the business doesn't work. Hence, had I done a business plan, that might work. So that was really a hopeless failure. And I took a huge knock in a number of ways, mainly my ego, which probably needed a bit of knocking down a number of levels. But I was kind of like, I lost kind of faith in myself. I thought, is Weidy, was it lucky, and this and the next thing. You know, a lot of people I've heard over the years, oh, Weidy was lucky, and this and the next. And I'm quite proud to say, you don't get lucky 10 years in a row. So you might have been lucky with the initial concept. It might have been the right time, the right place. But to run a business successfully for 10 years isn't luck. There was some skill involved, or some kind of business kind of idea. But I really lost all kind of thing, and I went into a little bit of a depression, to be honest with you. And my wife was like, you've got to do something. And then I did what I really suggest none of you do. I did, when I go and give talks and I talk about the worst thing you can possibly do, it's exactly what I did. It's called fishing. So you're kind of not really sure what to do. So you put a whole lot of lines in the water, a little bit of social media and a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of that. One of them will bite, and then that's the one we'll go with. Well, my advice is don't do that. Whatever you do, throw yourself 100,000% into.
Laser focus.
An absolute laser focus. That fishing thing doesn't work. It didn't work for me. And I did it, and it didn't work. And then, fortunately for me, it got to 2010. And I said, I'm an entrepreneur, and I won all these awards, and I kind of, I've got to do something for the Soccer World Cup. This can't come and go, and I wasn't renting my house out, so what was I going to do? And I got introduced to an artist that did those macaraba hats, the miners' hats, the macarabas. And I set up and this is, if I look at it, and I was telling you before, that this is probably, if you take the time, and depending on how you're measuring it, maybe by income, by success, by whatever, this was probably my most successful venture out of everything. Really what we did was, those macarabas, the original proper ones, are a piece of artwork. I mean, they're hand-painted and beautiful and the thing. But I said, why don't we mass produce this? You've got everyone from all over the world coming here. The guys couldn't hand paint and make those sufficiently. There's certainly a market for that. But what about if we take this mainstream? And we actually had a plastic mold made, and we did a kit form. So we took the helmets, and you were able to put it together, and it came with stickers, different South African stickers, and different, we did all the different countries, and you could buy it in kit form. And we sold hundreds of thousands of them. I got them listed at Woolworths and Acumen and all the retailers and this and the next thing. But that was a project that I did literally just for 6 months. So I hired premises on a 6-month lease. I took on staff on a 6-month contract. And literally the whole thing was set up just for the World Cup. And after the World Cup, we closed the doors. Whatever helmets we had left, I gave to charity. And it was immensely successful. And I think that was kind of almost like a catalyst that gave me like a bit of confidence again to say, okay, maybe you're not such a moron and you can actually kind of do something. And after that, I kind of made another, not error. Some of them
learning.
Learning. Some of them were successful, some of them were unsuccessful. I don't know if anyone has heard of a thing called tourism radio. Mark Elliwell, you spoke to. Anyway, I invested in his tech company, and 3 months later, he got bought up by an overseas company for a fortune of money, and that was like a great investment. I invested in other tech companies and lost a lot of money. So really what I did, the point that I'm putting across, what I did after that was I invested in other people's businesses, which for me personally was also the wrong thing to do. Because certainly with my personality, I want to be in control of it and drive it, and not kind of, you may as well go to the casino, as far as I'm concerned, unless you really have an inherent knowledge. And one of the things that I can say is, if anyone is investing in someone else's business, because of all, I've invested in very successful businesses. A business called iFix that fixed Apple products. I own part of that business. I saw an entrepreneur that I really liked, Alex Faree, thought he was great, saw kind of like, just had a vision that this was the thing, and it's been great. It's been really good. But one of the things that I can say in terms of investing in other people's businesses is, choose a business, if you're going to invest in it, that you know and understand. So, for example, I've already said I'm a technical ignoramus. Some of these tech businesses that I invested in went completely haywire. Well, my hands were tied. It was very frustrating. There was no ways I could go in and kind of do anything about it. So all businesses that I have invested in or that I currently have investments in, I'm able to do something with myself. If it suddenly goes haywire, I can say, right, move out the way, I'm coming in, and I'll give it a bash myself to kind of save your investment. But really what I've learned is to invest in myself. The best returns I've got is for myself.
Which came to Uber Flavour.
Uber Flavour, yeah. Okay, so this is my current venture. And really being an entrepreneur, I've kind of looked and taken a view, and it's not just lately, because then I wouldn't be a visionary. It's been for a long time. I've kind of taken the view that the rand is going to continue to weaken. And I'm not an economist, so don't back anything that I'm saying, but I believe it's going to continue to weaken. For very basic, simple reasons. When you don't have electricity, it's quite hard to grow an economy, as well as a number of other things. But basically, my view is that the rand will continue to weaken. And I have been looking for years and years and years and years, literally since YDE, for a product that I can produce locally in rands, so kind of put back into this economy, but export. And I was on a family holiday in Europe, and I came back, and I've got two little girls, Sienna and Scarlett. One's 5 and one's 8, and Scarlett is a mini me, although she's very pretty and blonde like my wife, but she's like, and she's very sensitive to sugar, like me. And so it's kind of not the kind of kid that you can go and like give a Coke to. I mean, she'll be bouncing off the walls. They'll call airport security. We were flying back, and we were in Frankfurt in Germany, and my wife said to me, can I get her something to drink? She needs something to drink. And I ran up, and now I'm looking for something that doesn't have a lot of sugar and it's maybe a bit healthy, and it's the next thing, so I don't get crapped on by my wife, and my child doesn't go bonkers. And I picked up a rooibos iced tea. And I knew rooibos had taken off overseas, but wasn't really aware of how much it had taken off. And I was quite proud of myself. I said, I got a rooibos iced tea. And I was reading the thing on the plane, and it said made in Stuttgart. And I was like, it was like someone sticking a dagger in my heart. Rooibos, Northern Cape, traditionally South African, only grown in one place in South Africa. You're now making it in Stuttgart. This was like, this didn't work for me at all. And I said to my wife, I obviously didn't sleep one wink on the plane, because once my mind starts going, then zzz, and I said to my wife, I'm going to do a rooibos iced tea. And I came back and I said to everyone, no, I'm going to develop a rooibos iced tea to export. And everyone said to me, oh, but there's Boss. And I got to be careful what I say now.
Very careful.
And I kind of said,
You should have got them on to stage at the same time.
okay, I'd love to have that debate one day. And basically, before this, I employed an ex-Woolworths food developer, and I said, I want to do this rooibos-based iced tea for the export market. Let's do a project and see what kind of, what are the unique selling points? What does this product need to kind of fulfill in order to get into the overseas market? And remembering that, I wasn't planning on going to kind of Tesco's and the equivalent of the Pick and Pays. I was going to go niche. Obviously, the big aspiration, like a Whole Foods, something like that. I knew health was kind of happening overseas, and obviously it's coming here now. And we did an exercise, and we really found out a couple of things. If you want to break into that niche market, certainly in like a beverage, sugar's the evil. We all know that. Colorants, preservatives, additives, etc., etc. So now, everyone now is banding with a whole lot of things to say, yes, there's Boss, except Boss, the peach has never seen a peach, and the apple's never seen an apple. And in fact, if you look on the back of the can, it says 0.01% rooibos extract, which is a flavorant, and then a whole lot of chemicals listed underneath there. So that's fine and well, and it might very well be, and having said that, I'm not ditching Boss. I aspire to be as big as they are. I think they've done an amazing job. But really what I've done, the analogy that I give is a Boss is kind of like a Castle or Black Label, and we're craft beer. So they're both called iced teas, but they're very different and aimed at a very different market. So I then set about and kind of found out, very similar to YDE, how do you go about developing this product? And the same thing happened. Listen, a couple more doors might have opened, because you kind of say, I used to have YDE, and then all of a sudden they're interested in talking to you, which irritates me. But I got some people talking to me, and it didn't really help that they spoke to me, because basically everyone that I spoke to said, well, it can't be done. What can't be done? You can't develop an iced tea with freshly pressed fruit juice in it, real brewed tea, with no preservatives, no added sugar, no colorants, and no anything other than just the fruit and the iced tea, and give it a shelf life, because you can't export a product that's fresh. It needs to have a shelf life. And in order to export, it needs to have like a shelf life of a year, because by the time it gets shipped over and there's something that's so I set about doing it, and everyone told me it couldn't be done, and I managed to find a factory and a process, and we have done it. So effectively, in Uber Flavour, there is nothing else. It's the only iced tea, certainly locally, I found one overseas that's real brewed tea. So we do a huge vat of tea, like 700 kilos of tea leaves, and when we've got 3 flavors, apple and cinnamon. They're all rooibos-based, apple and cinnamon, mango and vanilla, and honey and lemon. We're busy with a testing of fourth, which is peach and elderflower. And really what it is, it's pressed apple juice, and whole cinnamon quills put into the vat of tea to give it the cinnamon flavor. So there's no additives or flavors. For example, kind of in the mango, you might get little black specks in it. Those are vanilla pods that we put in. So it's a real, it's the only way to describe it, it's the real thing. It's a real product. Very different price point, very different thing. Can I open this box and show everyone a bottle? It's a very, very different, there we go.
He knows how to open this product.
A very different product to what you all might know and understand as an iced tea. This is a real iced tea. And I'm just going to show you the packaging that we've done. So, someone's winning this tonight. I don't know who it is.
The best tweet, eh? So better tweet.
So that's kind of what we did, and we designed the packaging in this way because it's a premium product, and because even in an overseas market, I needed it to stand out. So what do you expect when you go thing? You're either going to get a PET bottle or you're going to get a can. Well, you're not. You're going to get this. Okay? So after finding a producer who would produce it, I kind of went and I said, okay, can I just carry on?
Yeah, we're almost running out of time.
Okay. So, I'm going to be quick. So I've kind of found a producer, and this was November last year, and they kind of said, okay, well, we're going to do a run. This is a big factory that produces for Woolworths that produces this for me. And they said, okay, well, we're going to do a run, and we need to do 10,000 bottles. I'm like, 10,000 bottles, what am I going to do with those? How am I ever going to sell them? And I thought to myself, you know what? It's a premium product, might be a bit expensive for the local market, it was designed, but why don't I try sell it just to get a response, learn a little bit. I kind of know a little bit about retail and a little bit about clothing. Don't know a hell of a lot about this. Let me try and kind of learn the market a bit and pay my school fees, proverbial school fees, doing it locally here. And we produced 10,000 bottles, and I had no employees. I was on my own, and I took a cooler box, and I drove around the whole of Cape Town, going and taking my product and getting it in, and within 6 weeks, we sold all 10,000 bottles. I sold all 10,000 bottles. And that kind of gave me this thing again to say, okay, you're on the right thing. Even at this price point, even at kind of thing, it can work. And I've been playing catch-up ever since. We've run out of stock twice so far. And the nice news, which I'm happy to share with you, is not only do we have 6 distributors from around the world approached us to look at the product, which we've sent samples to, but the product is being listed with Marks & Spencer in the UK.
Oh.
Very happy.
So you actually got in there? Last time we're
in. And yeah, so super stoked. This is my complete focus now. And hopefully, by the time I get invited to talk next, it will be the guy from Uber Flavour, not the guy from YDE. I hope.
Hold on. Okay, thank you. We have some questions. Okay, we're running out of time here, so sorry guys. We're going to have some questions. We're going to ask 1 or 2 questions with a microphone. So, but before we get there, just get them ready so long. Before we get there, how do you define good design by Carl?
Good design for me, and that's a very kind of personal thing. It's design needs to work. So good design for me, because it's quite, not anything, but quite easy to make something look pretty, whatever it might be, whether it be a chair or a piece of clothing, whatever, does it actually work? So if it's clothing, is it comfortable, does it kind of thing? Is the chair, is it comfortable to sort of thing? That for me is good design. It's functional, it works, because for me design should have a purpose. Otherwise, you should call it art. I suppose no, but kind of, do you know what I mean? Like a painting is kind of beautiful to look at, but it doesn't have necessarily any purpose kind of thing. Design, when you're talking about design specifically, it's normally related to a product or a brand or something, and then it needs to work for whatever the end consumer you think they should be.
Okay. And must it look good as well, or just...
Well, it's preferable that it looks good. I mean, if it doesn't look good, well, then you're not going to have a market for it. Then it's probably won't exist.
What went through the design process? How did you get to that bottle, that shape?
Okay, so first of all, I was adamant that my product wasn't going to go into a can.
Okay.
Secondly, I'm not a big beer drinker, but whenever I do buy beer, I buy Grolsch because I love the lid. So I kind of thought, if I'm going to come into the marketplace without a gazillion rand to market and this and the next thing, what will be of the point of difference? And I was hoping there were other people that felt the same way as me.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
What was the biggest challenge you faced when starting your first business?
Biggest challenge I faced was someone having enough belief to give me premises. Everywhere I went to kind of said, we don't want an indoor flea market in our shopping center. And once again, with no kind of, it's quite easy now that you've got a vision in your mind of a YDE store, of what it is. Just if you try and think that there was nothing, and you get a guy who walks in some torn jeans and tackies at age 21 to try and kind of tell you his thing, that was the biggest challenge.
What advice would you give starting entrepreneurs approaching you with a business idea looking for an investment or funding?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm quite straightforward on this. Particularly because of the success of YDE, a lot of people think that, well, if I'm involved, then there may be some kind of thing. But the first question I ask someone is it 90% of people that come and approach me don't really have a business, they've got an idea. And shoot me down, but I put no value in an idea. Everyone has ideas. Everybody, you're in the shower and you think, oh, that would be nice. It's in the execution of the idea. So I've got a policy where anyone that contacts me, I'll take the time to see them. Anyone here tonight, if anyone says any value, even if you just want to chat, I'm more than happy. I'll see anyone because I kind of know what it's like. And if I can help or share anything, I'm happy to do so. But when people come to me and say, I've got this great idea, and then they kind of expect me to do something with it, I'm like, A, I don't need your idea. And B, if I am going to get involved, I want to know that you can do it. That's the hard part. Coming up with an idea to do an iced tea overseas wasn't the most brilliant idea. Getting it done was a year of fucking hard work. No, I mean, how many times do you get the door closed in your face and kind of not take no for an answer, and they tell you it can't be done and it's that person that I want. So anyone who's looking here and looking for investment and wants to chat to me, I can't guarantee it, but I'm more than happy to chat to you.
Questions? There we go, right at the back. We shall run across. There it is. Thank you, my man.
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Great story, Paul. I really enjoyed listening to it. Now, I want to ask you a question about what you said about laser-like focus. How did you maintain that for your first venture? And obviously with this new product that you have now, you didn't have any experience in it. So what's your system for maintaining that focus?
Okay, so did everyone hear the question? How does kind of one remain laser? I didn't always have it. As I say, I made quite a lot of mistakes with that fishing story that I told about putting it all over. As I say, for me, and I can't speak about it, for me personally, if you're passionate about what you're doing, you will have that focus. So with YDE, I didn't want to know anything else. Listen, it was easy for me. I was 21 years old. You became Mr. YDE. You walk into nightclubs and they open up and the kind of girls are flocking around. It was easy to stay focused. Do you know what I mean? Why would you want to do anything else? Post that, I've made an actual concerted effort to let go of everything. So as I said, I've been involved in a number of different businesses, and I've actually let a whole lot of them go and said, I'm sorry guys, I cannot be involved. I cannot give you my time because I'm focusing on this. And this, although, I'm making out to be 7 months old, if we're successful, or we're not successful yet, we've got a long way to go. I've got a 3 times rule with starting businesses. 3 times as much money as you think it's going to be, 3 times as much time, and take 3 times as long. So what I measure myself is I say any startup business, and this is just from my experience, it's not factual, it's 3 years till a business can kind of get some traction. So I think that I'm way ahead of the curve in my 7 months. I'm so totally stoked. And that's kind of what drives me. I'm kind of saying, I want to get there. I want to make this business profitable after 18 months. And that's what's driving me. And I think each person's got to find what drives them. I don't know what drives them. I need to become Mr. Uber Flavour now, not Mr. YDE. So that's my focus, and it keeps me straight on.
Well, the question at the back there. Okay, let's go.
Phew, it's hot up here.
It's got the camera, the lights, the action. There we go.
I want to find out do you ever, like, in your business ventures work with any partners, and like how, if you do or don't, like how do you keep that like synergy or like find the right partner and like stuff like that? Because when I think about it, I can't do it by myself. Like, I commend you on doing it by yourself or whatever you did, but like, I'd like to know like how you get a partner who helps you grow and stuff like that, or pick a partner.
Okay. There's a few. First of all, you can do it by yourself. You just need to surround yourself with the right people that don't necessarily need to be partners. So, for example, I can barely read a balance sheet. I'm hopeless with numbers, but I've got a great accountant. It's the same as you're not a doctor, you don't know what to do with your sore throat, but you can go to a doctor. So you can do that in business as well, and you can surround yourself and get the help from where you need. In partnerships, I was very, very lucky. With YDE, a couple of years into it, I brought my brother into the business, and you can hear horror stories about working with family. This is probably the best thing that I could ever do, and one of the things that I miss most now is not having him with me. It was the most amazing partnership. It was like we really complemented each other. So I was the gregarious kind of spokesman for the kind of business, and kind of chose the designers and went to the parties and got everyone excited and spoke to the media and this and everything. He actually made the business work in the background, the operations, the opening and closing and kind of banking and all the stuff that I think is boring is what he did. He's a kind of introverted person, and so he was perfect for that role, and he couldn't do my role and I couldn't do his, and that would be the main advice that says kind of it's a yin and yang. I wouldn't take on a person the same as you. And then quite recently, a couple of years ago, I had another business and an absolute horror story that ended up nearly in court with a partner that I didn't know, and I kind of got taken up for the exact reason that you just said, because I thought I couldn't do it on my own. It was one of my dips where I thought, well, I'm not that confident and I don't know, and let me rather kind of spread the risk, and I didn't, and it was an absolute disaster. So,
One more question.
that helps.
One more. Here we go, one in front. Here we go. I think you put your hand up.
I just want to know what made you go with Uber Flavour.
In terms of the name,
Yeah, what was the thinking?
okay, so I knew someone was going to ask this question. When you're kind of doing like the ideation period and you're kind of going up and you're kind of doing the thing, remember, A, it was aimed at the overseas market, and B, immediately, either good or bad for me, the connotation is Uber taxis. But Uber taxis weren't here when I developed this name. You just remember, this is done over a period of time. So they weren't in South Africa yet. And we had a long debate, myself, my wife, my designer, my family, my friends, about whether to start again and rebrand stuff and change it. And I, correctly or incorrectly, decided not to. Maybe because I just didn't want to spend the money rebranding the whole thing. And maybe because you'll never see us ever in any marketing material use the word just Uber. It's always Uber Flavour. And Uber, the word Uber means great, better, yeah?
Don't you think if like Uber taxis decide, I don't know, they do something bad or bad publicity, that could bring your business?
Yeah.
People could link it to.
Yeah, it can. My feeling on that, and I have lots of debates around dinner tables with it, is that it's very hard to confuse a beverage and a taxi service. You know, if I was going to do Uber coach,
2 o'clock in the morning, maybe not.
maybe Uber coaches kind of thing, or some form of transport, maybe I'd agree with you, but not with a beverage to a taxi service. But it might be.
Great, thank you very much. Sorry, guys. Tom.
The legal implications of having the name, are you worried at all about that?
No, I do things properly. So we we registered. We've actually just last week it came through. Uber Flavour belongs to us. Uber Flavour, the URL.com is ours, and a number of other .coms are also ours, all related to that. So no, there's no legal issues. There's quite a few Uber businesses. There's an insurance company, Uber, OOBA, kind of thing. You can't, when I registered, they wouldn't let me register just the word Uber. But as I say, we Uber Flavour, and it goes to the flavors. Hopefully you guys soon will get to taste these. And when you talk about the flavors, it's almost like a wine. We say rich in umami. It's got layered flavors. So you can taste the cinnamon, you can taste the apple, you can taste the vanilla, you can taste that's layered flavor, and that's an Uber flavor. It's about the flavor of the drink.
He's really selling it. It's not that. No, I'm joking. It's really good. That is good. We've got the Twitter competition. So, ladies, whoever wins this competition gets this box.
And they get coasters.
You get coasters. I want coasters. Oh, microphone. Yeah, sorry. No. Thank you. No, that's all good.
Thank you.
Okay, so thanks to everyone who was tweeting. Really, really amazing response. We're even training in South Africa again, so give yourselves a round of high fives and applause. So there were quite a few interesting tweets, and I'm just going to start off with a couple of ones that were the most interesting to me. Rowan tweeted, "Got 99 problems, but YDE ain't one." Your advice on selling your startup. And then our runner-up for tonight is Simon Stockley, saying that whether it is by accident or not, the key differentiator is confidence and self-belief. So
Simon, we are Simon. You get two 200 Rand tickets to Daddy's Deals. You may pass it over to him.
Sure. Hi, Simon. Nice to meet you.
That is sweet.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
no, she's not stealing the box of Uber Flavour, don't worry. And the winner tonight is Danny. Danny, where are you?
There he
Danny
is.
I have no idea how to pronounce your surname, but it's Super Dan, yeah.
There we go. He gets the box.
So Danny's tweet reads, entrepreneurship is basically
Enjoy.
one part conviction, one part
Sorry, I
naivety,
opened it to show
a bunch
them.
of
Make them
actions,
cold before you drink
and,
them.
well, 2 parts mom.
Okay. And 2 parts
Thanks so
more.
much, guys.
Thank you very much. Oh, I forgot about the business card bowl. Done, thank you. This is why we got the amazing guys. Thank you very much. So please do draw a lucky winner from
Sure.
here.
Sorry, someone at the back there.
Oh, yeah, Jacqueline. Okay, so could all the winners from tonight please go and see Jacqueline? She's got the hand up there. Stand up, Jacqueline. There we go. She's wearing a hat. So can all the winners please go get this so we can get your details and we can follow up with you with other prizes and stuff. So
Michael Eriksson, Next
Michael
Level
Eriksson.
Design.
cool. He gets 2 vouchers. There we go. Where's Michael Eriksson?
Don't worry, Michael, I'll come to you. Cool, man.
Great, and then we're going to get another draw. I'll just shake this up a little bit.
Oh, more.
Yeah, more. We've got prizes here. Here we go.
Lovely. That looks like a nice
That
card.
looks like a nice one, yes.
Melissa Wenzel.
Oh, Melissa. Aha. There we go, Melissa. She's a very lucky girl. She won last month as well. Don't know how this goes. And that's random drawing there. Thank you very much for
Oh,
coming
it's a
to speak
pleasure.
to us.
Thank
We
you for
really
having me.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
We've got this for you.
Cool.
So this is called Seb the Red Fish and at Jaws the Fish. This is, Adelaide's baby originally. And the idea behind Seb the Red Fish is that you can talk to him on Twitter and say how's it to him and chat to him on, just have general conversations and
Awesome.
network your business and market your business through it. And also redfish.co.za are the company behind this. They do, okay, how do I put this? Right, so if you're looking for a plumber in your area, you don't want just any plumber. You go into redfish.co.za or electrician or any serviceman, and you go and look for the plumber or electrician in your area, and they get rated by other people
Don't phone
using
me.
it. So don't phone him, but you can phone redfish.co.za. And then also, we got the fruit cube for you. How's that?
Thank you.
So the fruit cube is a box of fruit delivered to your office every week. Brilliant.
Thank you so much.
So you're going to get 4 of these coming next week. There you go.
Lovely.
Great, thank you. And guys, thank you very much. Thank you for everybody who took part. Once again, thanks to our sponsors, Payfast, Sight and Sound, everybody. Pizza, thank you very much.
Guys,
And
I'm not
Video
running
Cast.
anywhere, but I'm dying for the toilet, so I'm just running downstairs and then
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.